الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والتسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we're going to continue from where we left off last time. And the topic was Adhabul Qabr wa Na'imu. What is the legal foundation, or the kind of, what are the proofs for establishing as a belief that the punishment or the bliss of the grave does take place? We mentioned some verses and things to that extent. I want to start now on page number 84. وأما الحديث الدالات على حقية نعيم القبر وعذابه, about the hadith on this topic about the grave and those two things. And he begins with the famous hadith. We've covered part of it already. The hadith from Ibn Umar that the Prophet ﷺ said, it's narrated by Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim, إن أحدكم إذا مات عرض عليه مقعده بالغداة والعشي إن كان من أهل الجنة فمن أهل الجنة وإن كان من أهل النار فمن أهل النار فيقال هذا مقعدك حتى يبعثك الله عز وجل إليه يوم القيامة. That this narration is that the Messenger of God said that all of you will be made to, or your actions, not your actions, sorry, your final place, your maq'ad, will be shown to you during the day and during the evening, during two periods, bil-ghadati wal-ashi. In kana min ahli jannah, if it's a person that's from Jannah, meaning a person who's been given Jannah as a reward for his actions, then it says that Jannah is what he will see, and if he's from the fire, then fire is what he will see until God resurrects them, meaning these two states will be shown to them every day. There's an inference quite clearly here that therefore people in Barzakh is an entirely separate place. So people don't go to Jannah when they die, and they don't go to Hell when they die, but they go to Barzakh, which is a separate place, and they're shown the fire, or they're shown Al-Jannah every day, or it's shown to them, which also the clear inference that they are, Barzakh is a place that they're cognizant, they have cognition, they have perception, they're able to perceive things. And in another hadith, the Messenger of God alayhi salatu wasalam talked about a particular person who's been buried, and the hadith from Zayd ibn Thabit, and he talks about, and this hadith is interesting because the Messenger of God asks, and this is about in relation to when Zayd ibn Thabit says he was with the Messenger of God alayhi salatu wasalam fi ha'id li Bani Najjar. Bani Najjar were a group of people, a tribe in Medina Munawwara, and the Messenger asked, the particular set of graves, whose graves they were, and does anybody know them? He said, Man ya'rifu ashab hadil akbar. Does anybody know the people who are buried here? And a man said, look, I know them. And the Messenger ﷺ asked, Mata matu ay fil jahiliya o ba'daha fahum mushrikuna mu'minun. He said, did they die in the period of ignorance or after? And are they mushriks? Are they polytheists, or are they believers? Mu'minun, in my understanding here, would include, even if it were in that period before the message came to them, that maybe it's in reference to the people who still believed in one God, and muwahidun, people of that kind, al-hunafa. قال في الشرك, he said في الشرك, if it's صفة الشرك, mean they were polytheists. The Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasallam said something very interesting. He said, Inna hadhihi ama tubtala fi quburiha. There's a woman in this particular grave, and he said tubtala fi quburiha. He uses the word ama. Ama can mean slave, but ama can mean reference generally as like a Jane Doe, for instance. So you don't know the person's name, so you just say ama. she's being punished in a grave. فَلَوْلَا أَن تُضَافِنُوا لَدَعَوْتُ اللَّهَ أَن يُسْمِعَكُم من أن يسمعكم من عذاب القبر الذي أسمع منه. Now, he said alayhi salatu wasalam, and this hadith is in Sahih Muslim, that he said, if it were not for the fact that you would no longer bury your dead, if it were not for that, meaning if it were not for the fact that you would not bury your dead, I would pray to God that He allows you to hear what I can hear from the grave. Meaning, if I were to make that dua, you wouldn't bury your dead in the ground. And that's a hyperbole in the sense that, meaning I'm not going to do it because you wouldn't be able to bear it as well. You wouldn't be able to bear it. Because then one can say, does that mean people who are not buried in the ground, that they're not adhab al-qabr for them? No, it's hyperbole and it's use of language here for a particular effect. Or it could be literal. ثم أقبل علينا بوجهه صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال تأوذوا بالله من عذاب النار. So the Prophet ﷺ then told them, said, seek Allah's protection, safety from the punishment of the fire. قالوا نعوذ بالله تعالى من عذاب النار, that we seek protection. نعوذ عفوا نعوذ بالله من عذاب النار. ونعوذ, we seek protection from with God من عذاب النار. قال, he said, تعوذ بالله من عذاب القبر. He said, seek God's protection or safety from the punishment of the grave. They said, نعوذ بالله من عذاب القبر. Then they said, we seek protection from that. So تعوذ بالله من الفتن ما ظهر منها وما بطن. That seek protection from fitan. Now, fitan could be translated as particular events that will take place that are of the nature of which are, for instance, let's say great wars. Fitan I would interpret here to be historical events that take place where many people suffer. Many people suffer. Because fitan is normally used with fasad. They say al-fitan wal fasad. So I would argue that that's what fitan means, where people are really tested and pushed the most. And genocides, massacres, things of that nature, wars of any type really, that are entirely one-sided, where people are massacred. So they're fitans, and many fitan the Messenger of Allah, he prophesied, which took place. So he said, "Ma dhahara minha wa ma batan," that which is apparent from them and that which is hidden, because there can be fitan. So there can be fitan out there that are subtle, or they are. Not everybody has the ability to see those fitan, or to kind of tap into that particular form of knowledge or what's going on. And that normally happens, well, now it's kind of evident. That happens according to the Messenger of God in his words, when at a period where a liar is known as truthful, and a truthful person known as a liar. And we're going to get to the hadith of Afaq in a short while about lying. But where things have become, the reality of things change entirely. And there's a lot of confusion amongst people. So we probably could argue that we live in that time right now, where many things that we are involved in, we think that are of benefit, in fact, are completely destructive for us. So one of them, for instance, I believe is one of the great fitans of this era is our relationship with social media. That's one of the great fitan, 100%, because it's, although it has uses and good uses as well, of course, but I'm talking about what it's doing to kids and what it's doing to teenagers, and things of that nature, and how it's going to dictate the narrative in the future entirely for them, and the way they think of the world and the way they think of reality. So it's very dangerous. It's a fitna. That's not to say that there's not good parts of it as well. Remember, with fitan, when you have fitan, there may be elements of use that are valid, but then you have to look at the overall purpose of something, and so that will need to be unpacked in another session. Definitely. So then he said that exactly. Then they said we seek God's safety from these fitan. Ma dhahar minha wa ma batan. Then he said ta'awwadhu billahi min fitnati dajjal. And this is the greatest fitna. The greatest fitna is the fitna of Dajjal. Dajjal is, as you know, is a person. Well, Dajjal is a multitude of things, but or can be used for multiple things. But Dajjal in the hadith literature, we have many hadith, as far as I'm aware, more than 50 sahih hadith in and around about Dajjal. And Dajjal is a person that comes at the end of time. But Dajjal, with that meaning of Dajjal, comes with that person, comes a whole system and a whole play that you have of events. So he said, seek protection from the fitna of Dajjal. See, very interestingly, he said, he didn't say seek protection from Dajjal. Messenger of God said, Ta'awwadhu billahi min fitnati Dajjal. Seek protection from his fitna. Dajjal is not a person who's going to go around killing people individually or anything of that nature. But Dajjal has an effect or an influence on people that uses many different tools, you could say. So we move on to the next narration, which I want to go to, which is on the next page, Adhab al-Usat fil Barzakh. Do believers, are they punished in their graves as well? Do they receive punishment? Now, this is a very interesting topic. Number one, what would be the purpose for believers in God? Muslims, meaning here in this context. What would be the purpose of punishing them in their graves? Is there any real benefit in punishing them? Well, according to some of the ulama, the believers in their graves, the punishment is lit-tathhir, is for purification. According to some, that once if they fell short and they did something that was deserving of punishment, that punishment would be for a period, and then they wouldn't be punished like that again, meaning those sins have been paid for, essentially. That's one opinion. So yeah. Now, Adhab al-Usat fil Barzakh, he says, جاء في كثير من الأحاديث النبوية ويدل على أن الأساة الذين لم يتوبوا قبل موتهم يعذبون في البرزخ بمعاصيهم على اختلاف أنواعها. Sheikh says that we have many narrations, prophetic narrations, that denote or tell us that sinners that do not repent before they die. Bear in mind that repentance can get rid of all of this. Tawbah can get rid of all of this. So if one makes tawbah nasuha, like a sincere tawbah, all of us, me, myself, if I make tawbah now, inshallah, and Allah forgives me, then that won't be, you know, when tawbah is accepted, it's accepted. It's not like God accepts your tawbah, but you're still punished. That wouldn't make any sense. And that's why tawbah is so important for the believer. Why? Because we sin every day. It's something that we slip in every day. So tawbah, a renewed tawbah, is important for all of us to make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we seek forgiveness for what we've done as a sign of our regret for that. He said, if they don't make tawbah before they die, yu'adhabuna fil barzakh, they are given punishment in the barzakh, bima'asihim, for their sins or their disobediences, ala ikhtilafi anwa'ihim, based on to degree of what they did, you could say. Now, he very interestingly, and this is a bit controversial, he talks about the hadith of the two men in Sahih Muslim and in Bukhari who are being punished in their graves. The famous hadith, I mentioned it, either last lesson or I mentioned it in the lesson on the Quran, that, and I'm going to get to the hadith in a minute, that those two people in the graves were not disbelievers, they were believers, he argues. The Shaykh argues, Shaykh Abdullah Saraj rahimahullah ta'ala. He says روى البخاري واللفظ البخاري عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما قال مر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم على قبرين فقال إنهما لا يعذبان وما يعذبان في قبير أما هذا فكان لا يستتر من بوله وأما هذا فكان يمشي بالنميمة. Now this is the hadith, and the hadith states that the Prophet ﷺ, and the hadith is from Abdullah ibn Abbas, which is very interesting as well, that the Prophet ﷺ passed by two graves, and he said these two people are being punished, and they're not being punished for a kabir, meaning they're not being punished because they committed zina or drank alcohol. Amma hadha, meaning something that's so or you could say that they're not being punished for something that is big according to the people, but it is big in Allah, with God. That's one interpretation. And that is what this one here is being punished because لا يستطر من بوله. Now I want to explain this because this has been really, I've seen this it's explained incorrectly, and it triggers all sorts of problems. Now, for those people who have an issue with or have suffered from or still suffer today and struggle with OCD, I want to first really open this up and clarify this point. So OCD is a real issue, obsessive compulsive disorder. People do have it. Some people have it with thoughts. Other people have it with cleanliness, with water. Other people have it with organizing things to a level of obsession where it's beginning to affect their lives. So you have different forms of it. Now, one form that's quite common is that people have obsessive compulsive disorder when it comes to washing, and this is not unique to Muslims. You'll find non-Muslims. Muslims will say, oh, my wudu's broken, or I haven't made wudu properly or ghusl properly, where non-Muslims will say, oh, there's germs on my hands, and there's dirt on me. So it's the same problem. So it's the same issue, and that issue needs CBT. It needs the different forms of therapy. There are really good forms out there, and anybody who has that problem, please go out there and get that therapy that's needed, and get that help that's needed, professional help. The ulama can't really help you on that one. You need people who have professional skill set in that can therapists that can help you get through that. And inshallah, Allah make it easy for you all if anybody has that problem. When people often read this hadith, people with OCD interpret it in their own light, because this first part of the hadith states that this man لا يستطر من بوله, that he wasn't, he did not yastatir, istitar meaning he didn't cover from urine. Now, what does that mean? Firstly, so if somebody misinterprets this, they would assume, oh, if that means it got a drop of urine on my clothes, and imagine how that plays out in the mind of a person that already has those issues. It doesn't mean that at all. This was a man who had animals. He had animals. He was a shepherd, and he would allow his animals to urinate on him. I mean, he didn't care if they urinated on his clothes or anything of that kind. This is not a person who goes to the bathroom and has and later finds a little bit of urine on their underwear or something like that. That's not talking about that at all. This is talking about something very specific where it's a kind of it's not khafif, it's not light. And we know that because there was a man who came to the Masjid of God alayhi salatu wasalam, and he said, I go to the bathroom, and after I relieve myself, I feel a sensation, i.e. I feel that there are maybe a drop of urine. And the Masjid of God said, just leave your private parts slightly wet, so that thought will not occur to you then, that you'll just think it's a water. I mean, obviously that may happen to you, and as long as you've done as best as, to relieve yourself and to clean yourself, wet your private area with some water, and that hada kafin yani. Don't put yourself in a state of mashaqqa. The religion is not here to make it difficult for you. Sitting there for 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, worrying about that now is mashaqqa. More than a few minutes is mashaqqa, really. So as long as you've taken the means, and that's sufficient. This is a man that wasn't careful at all, in fact, with these animals, and they would urinate on him, because this is la yastatu min bawlihi. As for the second person kana yamshi bin namima, and namima is a tale, or imagine you hear somebody say something about somebody else, you take it and you go tell another person, but you add something on. That's a namima, a tale bearing, we call it in English, where you're passing things on to other people and information, and the second person was that person. The Prophet ﷺ then called for an asib, ratib. I told you, like a branch that was fresh, and then fresh branch, he broke it, بإثنين فشقه باثنين فغرس على هذا واحدا وعلى هذا واحدا. He put one in that grave and one in that grave. He almost planted it in. He said, لعله يخفف عنهما ما لم يبس. As long as this branch doesn't wither away, it stays fresh. This was the evidence that growing plants, etc., on a grave has, because he said ما لم يبس, as long as it doesn't go, it doesn't die, essentially, it doesn't go dry, then لعله يخفف عنهما. We hope that this will relieve their punishment. Very interesting point, really interesting. Why is it that, why do those branches carry that, and how would they relieve that punishment? One could say that it was something that the Messenger of God was told to do, and his hands touched, and because of that, there are many other answers to it. In another riwayah, it says, "Amma ahaduhuma fakana yaghtabu nas." There was one of them would backbite people, so it's the same, and we're going to that in a minute and what that means. روى الإمام أحمد والطبراني من حديث يعلى ابن سياب رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم مر على قبر يعذب صاحبه فقال إن هذا كان يأكل لحوم الناس، أي بالغيبة الحديثة يعني يقرأ الحديثة. And in another narration, the Prophet, so you have all these narrations. So Sheikh Abdullah is going to mention different narrations, rahimahullah ta'ala, and he's going to try to reconcile them, because he's going to argue that they're the same narration, actually, that there was a person who was being punished in the grave, and he said, Inna hadha kana ya'kulu luhum an-nas, that this person would eat the meat of people, meaning he would backbite them. وَرُوَاتُ مَوْثُوقُونَ, that hadith is sahih as well. وَجَاءَ فِي رِوَايَةٍ صَحَّحَهَا Ibn Hibban. Ibn Hibban narrates another one, which states, وَكَانَ الْآخَرُ يُؤْذِي النَّاسِ بِلِسَانِهِ, that this other person, he would harm people by his tongue. Through his tongue, he would harm people. وَيَمْشِي بَيْنَهُمْ بِالنَّمِيمَةِ, and he would stir trouble amongst them, meaning he would walk amongst them spreading information about each other. Abu Dawood has a narration, and Anas radiallahu anhu as well, from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this hadith I quoted in the Quran lesson about when he was taken to Baytul Maqdis, and in Baytul Maqdis he had a vision. He saw something there, and he saw one man standing and one man on the floor lying down, and he would hit a rock in his head. We talked about this in the Quran lesson, and then it would roll away. And when the Prophet, when he would come back, the man with the rock, he would see that the other one. He saw in a dream. He saw in a dream. He would, when he picked the rock up, he would come back, and the man's head was back to normal, and they would do it again. And he said, this is a person who kana yanam lil maktubat, that he would sleep during the prayers, and he wouldn't read. He would sleep he wouldn't read the Quran in the nighttime. So we covered that hadith already. Now he has a short section before he gets to the point that I wanted to mention. Here's the point. He says there's another and he goes on and he quotes a few hadith. This other hadith that he quotes about the vision of Baytul Maqdis were people that had nails made out of metal, and they were sharp nailed, and they were scratching their faces, and they were people who would backbite as well, and destroy people's reputations. Now at the end of this section he says فهذا قال فهذا يدل على أنهما أي المقبورين كان مسلمين. These two people actually that he relieved the punishment for them alayhi salatu wasalam, were both Muslims, they were not non-Muslims. It's really interesting his take on this. This is an ijtihadi point, of course, this is his opinion. لأن البقيع مقبر مسلمين, that this happened in Jannah al-Baqi', and Jannah Baqi' only buries Muslims, he says. ثم قال ويقوي كونهما كان مسلمين رواية أبي بكر. There's another riwayah from Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr is another companion, not Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr. That Imam Ahmad narrates in Tabarani with the sound chain, which states يُؤَذَّبَانِ وَمَا يُؤَذَّبَانِ فِي كَبِيرٍ بَلَى مَا يُؤَذَّبَانِ إِلَّا فِي الْغِيبَةِ وَالْبَوْلِ. There's another narration that states they were not punished because of something that people see as being that important or big, but they were being punished, and they were being punished for the backbiting and the point of urine. So he says فهذا الحصر ينفي كونهما كان كافرين لأن الكافر وإن عذب على ترك الأحكام الإسلام فإنه يعذب مع ذلك على الكفر بلا خلاف. So he states that, but this is opinion that he says they can't be kuffar, because if they were kuffar they would be punished. They would be punished for their kufar. Why would they be punished for those things? Isn't a kufr greater than this punishment? This punishment seems to be a grade below kufr. So, and then he quotes in narration Ibn Khuzaymah as well, Hadith Abi Huraira, which is a marfu narration. It's not it's attributed to the Prophet ﷺ, but there is a bahath on it, which is أكثر عذاب القبر في البول, meaning that most common punishment in the grave is this type of where animals urinate on people, or there's a lot of urine you find on your clothes, or you don't even care about that type of. But the hadith has a bahath in it. Some say it's marfu, some attribute weakness to this particular narration, to this narration. So yeah. Then the Shaykh moves on, فَيَحْفَظُ لِسَانَهُ من عذاب إيذاء المسلمين بالسب والشتم والغيبة والنميمة ونحو ذلك من هفوات اللسان. Chapter on discussion or sub-discussion on protecting one's tongue from harming other Muslims. By what? Sab, shatam, and ghiba. By cursing them, criticizing them, and backbiting them, and namima, spreading tales or false information about them. So he's got a section on, firstly, keep your clothes clean from najas and things like that. And he says that min asbabi adhab al-qabr. So that's one point. The other point, so the first point is that to not keep your clothes tidy all the time and clean, and not have any najasa on them. But then he said min asbabi adhab al-qabr. What are the main reasons for the punishment of the grave? He said salatun or salatun tusalli tusalla afwan salatun tusalla bighayri tuhur. A prayer that's prayed without wudu. If one prays without wudu, there's a punishment in the grave for that person. وعدم الانتصار للمظلوم, that to not help somebody who is oppressed. And he mentioned several ahadith. So there's a hadith that he mentions that Imam Tahawi narrates with his isnad. That person who's punished in their grave, lashed 100 times actually. Now the reason he states that this was the case was because innaka sallaita. He keeps asking, why are you punishing me? Why are you punishing me? And he writes, because you prayed your salah without wudu. Wa mararta ala mazlum wa lam tansuruhu. You came by an oppressed person. Wa lam tansurhu. You came by an oppressed person and you didn't help him. The next thing is another is al-kadhib, al-kadhba, Yeah. Number 2 is lying. يحدث بها الكاذب فتبلغ الآفاق. The Prophet ﷺ is a hadith that it's an amazing hadith actually, that is a hadith for the Day of Judgment. Signs of the Day of Judgment, which come true only now. Only now do we. But the Prophet ﷺ said a man will awake in the morning and he will tell a lie and it will reach the horizons by the end of the day. Or in one, it will immediately reach, meaning it will reach the other side of the world, the point is. And you can do that right now. I mean, you could put something on the internet and it's not even, there's no waiting period. People can view that immediately in another part of the world. Also leaving the practice, leaving al-amal bil-Quran al-Kareem, practicing that which Allah said in the Quran. Zina, of course. Aklu mali riba, eating money that you've taken after charging people interest, and other things. Lima ja'a fi Sahih Bukhari, and there's a hadith for that. And that's hadith. I'm not going to repeat the hadith because we mentioned the hadith in the Quran session, so you can check it out there. Another one is al-ghulul wa al-akhdhu min al-mughannam qabl al-qisma, is taking property that's not yours before it's been correctly divided. And this was more related to war. And it's about a particular man who died, and the Sahaba said he was a martyr. And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, he's not a martyr. He's put on a garment from the hellfire. And because he took from the war booty a garment before it had been divided up amongst the people. So, and even though he died a martyr in that sense. So there's that narration about that as well. And the Prophet ﷺ talks about, the Shaykh mentions a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ to some extent about that. Now, I want to move on. He has a short section on وَمِمَّا يَدُلُ عَلَى عَذَابِ الْقَبْرِ وَنَعِيمِهِ وَأَنَّهُمَا لِلْرُوحِ وَالْجِسْمِ, that the punishment of the grave or its bliss is both felt by the soul and the body. He says, وَلَكِنْ فِي عَالَمِ الْمُغَيِّبِ عَنْ أَهْلِ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لِمَنْ كَشِفَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى لَهُ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. Now this has always troubled me a little, because that doesn't, when you say to somebody that it's the body and the soul, so my understanding of what the scholars mean by this is not the physical body that is buried in the grave, because that wouldn't make sense, because many of the bodies, they disintegrate. So that would mean that disintegration of a body would infer punishment. So I don't believe it means that. The Shaykh says, this happens in the unseen realm from the dunya, except he who Allah unveils it to. So my understanding of this is that body and soul means that as you feel pain in this world, in the body, it's exactly like that. It's not kind of this, it's not like mental torture, if that makes sense to you. So it's as if it's felt in the world to the body, it's felt like that in the grave as well. And he quotes some narrations for it. And the ulama have been talk about these, but none of these really infer the body and the soul thing, but they maybe have some benefits. Al-qabru rawda min riyad al-jannah or hafra min hufar al-nar. That the grave is a garden from paradise or a pit from hell. So therefore, the Shaykh says that the grave will be according to a person's Iman and his actions, or it will be according to his sins and his shortcomings. So then he mentions some more, and like I said, this clearly jasad and ruh doesn't mean the physical body. Jasad here, he means by that, and what's has to be meant by this is it's as you feel punishment. If you feel pain in the world, you will feel it just like that in the grave. Now the next section is ta'awwudhu sallallahu alaihi wasallam min adhab al-qabr wa amrihi bidhalika, to seek safety, God's protection from the grave, and how the Prophet would make that dua, and he would command. And the Prophets, of course, they don't suffer any punishment, anything of that kind, wal iyadhu billah. But they would do it, the sharia, so people know what dua to make for that. كان صلى الله عليه وسلم يتعوذ من عذاب القبر في آخر صلاته, that at the end of his prayer he would seek protection from it. في ذلك تعليم لأمتي, because this is to teach his community أن يتعوذ بالله من عذاب القبر, to seek refuge from the punishment of the grave في أقرب أحوالهم إلى ربهم. Why the salah? Because it's the closest point to your Lord that you're going to receive in the world when you're in the salah. هذا حال الصلاة. This is the state of the prayer. وما ذاك إلا لفظاء لفظاعة عذاب القبر وشدة هوله. Then it quotes a hadith for that, where the Prophet ﷺ said, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min adhab al-qabr. Oh Allah, I seek protection from the punishment of the grave. Wa a'udhu bika min fitnat al-masih al-dajjal, and from the Dajjal. Wa a'udhu bika min fitnat al-mahya wa fitnat al-mamat, and the fitna of the living and the dead. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-ma'thim wal-maghrib. Ma'tham, sorry. So, and there's a few other narrations as well to that effect. كما أنه صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يتعوذ من عذاب القبر في كل صباح ومساء. That in the daytime and in the evening time, he would make this dua, أعوذ بالله من عذاب القبر. And he also would make a dua, and this is to teach the people, of course, only. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-kufri wal-faqri wa adhab al-qabr. Oh Allah, I seek protection from kufr, from faqr, meaning poverty, and adhab al-qabr. Now the next section is al-asbab al-munjiya min adhab al-qabr, things that will give you salvation, protect you in the grave. What are those things? Ibn Qayyim Jawziyah has a good section on this as well. Actually, it's a very good section. So he mentions some conditions first. He mentions the conditions of nadam, iqla, and azm. Yeah. So there are three stages to any tawbah. The first is called an-nadam, the second is called iqla, and the third is called azm. So the first condition of tawbah is nadam, that one feels regret and guilt. That's the first stage of any tawbah. The second stage of tawbah is al-iqla anhu, that one gives the thing up, stops doing it. So first you feel guilty and then you give it up, number two. And the third condition of tawbah is azm, that you resolve yourself upon not returning to the action. These are the three conditions. That you resolve, or you make a pledge almost that you won't return to the action. This is called al-azm, ala an la ya'ud ila fa'lihi. So these are the three conditions of tawbah. Allah says in the Quran, illa man taba wa amana wa amila amalan salihan fa ulaika yubaddilu Allahu sayyi'atihim hasanatin kana Allahu ghafurur rahima. Allah says in the Quran, except those who turn to God and believe and do good righteous deeds, they are the people who God changes their sins to good deeds. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا. God is oft forgiving, oft merciful. So this is the first verse, and these are the first things that we must all do and inculcate, inshallah ta'ala. Number two, so that first principle was al-bu'du an asbab al-adhab al-qabr allati taqaddama bayan ba'daha. So to distance oneself from being in that situation to begin with. And what are the main things, which are tatahur, the purity issue, sin, disobedience, and to make sincere repentance. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر لي ولكم وأتوب إليه وسائر المسلمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.